This is Jean Watts, and this is Love in 60 Seconds.
We have been married for over 20 years.
And in that time, we have learned a few things that we'd like to share with you.
So if you're single, newlyweds, or seasoned in marriage, we think you will enjoy the upcoming program.
Absolutely. And we want you to like, engage, share, and do all of those wonderful things that we do on Instagram, Facebook, and every other social media outlets. Send us DMs. We want to hear from you.
This is
Love
in 60 Seconds.
60 seconds. Love in 60. Love in 60 seconds.
Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Frederick and Jean Watts, and this is Love in 60 Seconds on Monday, May 24th. Hope you guys are doing well, and we're waiting for people to join us on the chat, and hope that you have had a blessed and prosperous week.
Yes, we hope that you have had a blessed and prosperous week or past weekend. We had a great day here at home today, though. We just kind of hung around the house. For the most part, I did work today, but just a little bit. So I was able to spend some time with my hubby because he has to go to work tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So I was able to do that. I'm getting in here.
So we appreciate you guys tuning in, and thank you guys for, as always, for engaging us, not even just on tonight, but during the week, sending DMs and chatting with you guys. Definitely praying for you. I want to give a shout out to our sister Twy. She's saying hello to the Callaway family. Hope you guys are doing well. As always, we do appreciate you guys tuning in, and continue to like, share, and engage with us, and then share this with somebody who you think would appreciate the message. So we're going to get right on in the topic tonight. This should be a fun one. It's called The Masters of Pettiness.
Yes. Well, that's his title. So I liked the title, Is Your Spouse a Doctor of Pettyology? That's what I wanted to call it. Mm-hmm. See, but those are petty things. But anyways, we came up with this title because we want to talk about, pettiness in marriage and relationships, well, primarily marriage. Because these particular things, can be very harmful to marriage and relationships, just petty fights and petty things. And we're going to kind of give you an idea of how pettiness operates and how a petty person in that level of immaturity, because pettiness is really a level of immaturity. Mm-hmm. So, how that can be an effect to your relationship. There's our light. Just went out. We're going to turn it back on. Come back on, Mike. There we go. Okay. So again, we want to just kind of give people a little bit of time to come in and to listen and to share with us.
So what is pettiness? So pettiness is a undue concern with trivial matters or things that don't really matter, especially small-mindedness or spiteful in nature. Yeah. Because sometimes what you think is trivial to you may not be trivial to your spouse.
Absolutely.
So it could be important to them, but pettiness, when it's spiteful or when the nature is not really loving and kind, then, that is being, petty.
Absolutely.
And that causes issues in your conversations, in your relationships, in your intimacy, everything, right?
Yeah, and it's and I'm doing this as I'm doing some other things on my phone, trying to get acclimated, because we had a long day doing things around the house and sharing, so I was a little bit behind. So you guys forgive me for that, and my husband's going to carry it for a moment until I'm able to get caught up. So we're gonna get into some topics, but again, we're just wanting you to share. Go ahead and share these. The cast tonight with some of your followers and friends, and somebody that you might feel like can benefit from tonight's topics. Definitely. All right, so we're into it now, and we're getting ready to go. Pettiness in relationships. So let's talk about that.
Oh, good. So we've had our issues where we've had conversations, arguments, stuff, and one of us has been petty. That's human nature, and sometimes the person that's being petty sometimes does it to be antagonistic or to know that they don't have a dog in the fight, but if they can be petty and distract, there's all kinds of reasons people are petty.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's funny, but if your spouse doesn't think that it's funny, or like you said, if it's something that it's a trivial matter to you but not to them, then it's an issue, and you have to watch how you relate to your spouse concerning that matter and being petty, because it doesn't lead to anything positive.
No, and the end result of pettiness is never anything positive. It is always either something that's immaterial or doesn't matter at all, or something that's really negative. And that part, you really do not want to be the victim of it, and you do not want to be the person who causes it, because at the end of the day, you reap what you sow. So that kind of behavior can come back on you, and you can get that kind of behavior to come back. So we're going to kind of get into talking about our topics, because again, pettiness can be very hurtful. It can be very it can destroy your relationship. It really can destroy your relationship. And some examples of pettiness, like if your spouse does something that you don't like, what would be an example of
well, so like we talk about communication, and that's a foundation. If your spouse does something that you don't like, you should address it head on. Hey, I don't like it when you pick your nose and flick boogers at me. Something like that. It leaves no openness of what's the issue. But if you say something like, "Oh, here you go again. I hope you got your aim on tonight because you haven't hit me with your boogers all week," or something like that, you're being petty, and it doesn't allow you to engage in a healthy conversation. And then and that's just an example, but if it's something like that, your spouse is going to respond in either more pettiness or shut down or hurt. Right.
Absolutely. So, again, making sure that you are not dealing with your spouse on a level of immaturity in something that could be important to them, or that person, sometimes it's hard not to be petty, though, because you want to dig, you want to say a little dig, and you want to get back, because pettiness can be equated as a dig. It can be equated as something that is you want to say something nice, nasty, or another word is it passive aggressive.
Nice,
you know what I'm saying? You all of that. You're like, that thing that you wanted to do, I don't see how that's going to happen, because I did thus and so now it's not going to happen for you. Nice, nasty, but don't worry about it. We'll do something. We'll take care of it. You being nice, nasty. You're trying to say nice, but you did something nasty, right? So you did something mean. But again, those digs are not like, you shouldn't be trying to do a dig on your spouse. You know what I'm saying? You shouldn't be trying to do something mean or hurtful to get back at them for something that they said or something that they did. But let's get right into our actual topics. So pettiness, and you already said the definition. If you could read it again for those that just came on, for the definition of pettiness.
So pettiness is an undue concern with trivial matters, or it's especially when you're being small-minded, or you are spiteful in nature.
Absolutely. And that part, spiteful in nature and small-mindedness, it just does not have room in a successful relationship. You don't have room for it in a successful relationship. And the thing is, we were out of town this weekend, and somebody came up to us and said, "Hey, we watch you guys on Love in 60 Seconds. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And it was a couple. And we were like, that's fantastic. That's so blessed. But and everywhere we go, like, we see people that say that they watch us on Love in 60 Seconds. We're like, oh, okay. But we put these out so that people can apply them and have applicable tools to not have stupidity in your relationship. Nobody just wants to deal with that. And it gets old if you've been married for a long time. and somebody is consistently doing something
Mm.
that is irritating, you know what I'm saying? You should be able to get past that point, and you should get that point where we talked about the 4 C's, and that 4th C is where you are, that person is your confidant, and you're loving, beyond your loving companion, but they're your confidant. They're the person that you share everything with, and somebody that you have that type of relationship with. You're not going to practice being petty with that person,
Right.
because pettiness builds up defense. Pettiness builds up a wall. Pettiness builds up ill feelings and ill will towards that person. So it's not a productive action. It's not a productive thing to do. So if a person is being petty, that's a level of immaturity.
Yeah.
And so how do we, if we're not the petty one, now if we're the petty one, so we want to listen to this and look introspectively, is that the word? Introspectively, whatever the word is, you want to look inward so that you can help yourself. And if you are the person being petty, or if your spouse is being petty, how can you, if your spouse is being petty, how can you help them to stop being petty? Well, one of the first things is you can stop engaging and going back and forth and babying that behavior. You know, if they're saying something or doing something petty, well, you did this. Now, that's one of the things that I hate. If I bring something to the table, if I'm sharing something and you don't own what I'm sharing, and you say the first thing that you're doing, all while I'm talking, you thinking about what you're going to tell me about what I did, that is pettiness, and it's not productive. It's not productive at all. But that type of behavior, when a person is doing that and they continue to go back and forth, don't baby that behavior.
Right.
Don't even baby it. Don't embrace it. Just say, you know, okay, all right, and move on, you know, and table it.
It's not an effective way of communication. And what's going to happen is that if you don't address it, then, like, especially if you have a spouse that is doing that, you're never going to be able to get through anything, because you're always worried about what they're either going to say to you, or, like you said, you know that this pettiness may be coming when you have to do something. So you're not even ready to really conversate. You're trying to almost react to their reactions that they're going to give you. So, you know, when you are a person if you're married to somebody that's being petty, you know, and it's being consistent, or they're being a habitual pettiness, having a habitual pettiness, you know, you have to just like, look, you know, we got to have a serious conversation. You need to stop and listen to what I have to say. And you have to be able to take this constructive criticism in love, because I want to have an effective relationship. Absolutely.
Absolutely. You want to definitely be able to try to share. And we always talk about having that safe place. You want to have a safe place with your spouse, where you can share your feelings. And when you're sharing those feelings and you're sharing those emotions, that you don't feel like the person is going to clap back all the time. You know what I'm saying? And that's why it's really important to not try not to fight or discuss things when you're angry, or try not to discuss things when you're angry, because it becomes a fight. Table those emotions and let the emotion pass. I'm sorry.
And a lot of times, you know, even sometimes, I mean, I've been petty. I was probably petty today doing something in a joking, maybe not, but in a joking way. Sometimes my humor can be perceived as pettiness, and if it's being, you know, if I'm saying something maybe that I think is humorous, but it's offending my wife, or as she takes it as pettiness, and I have to look at it and say, you know, maybe I won't say that, or maybe I'll just answer the question directly. Maybe I won't answer your question with a question.
Right.
That can be petty sometimes. You know? Or, you know, maybe I'll think about the way I'm going to address, and maybe this is not a time for humor or whatever.
Right.
So sometimes you have to look inward, you know, to make sure that you are giving your spouse your best.
Absolutely.
Especially if you love them. You know?
Well, you should love your spouse.
I hope you do.
You should love your spouse.
Yeah.
I was out in the garden today, so my allergies are really kicking up. I was planting the rest of my flowers, and they're acting up right now, so forgive me. But anyways, another thing that you can do if your spouse is being petty is you be the person to take the high road. I remember now one time, a long time ago, this was before we got married. I can't remember exactly what you said, but we were
me too
watching television. What you?
No, she was talking about sarcasm is petty.
Sarcasm is completely petty.
And you know, we can be sarcastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sarcasm is completely petty, but I was thinking there was a time, do you remember when we were at your house and you had made something mention about a monkey or something? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay, that was terrible. And you were being petty and silly, but you didn't mean it hurtfully, but I took it hurtfully.
Nah, I was being like sarcastic. And
being sarcastic.
And
something about a monkey that had to do with me. Like, not that I look like a monkey, but it was something like something I can't remember. Yeah,
and I remember that, and that was offensive to you.
It was so offensive to me. Like it almost, he was like, not going to be married to me. Like, are you crazy, person? But again, those type of things. And listen, that was over 20 years ago. And so for me to remember it and for you to remember it, that lets us know that kind of dialogue and that kind of exchange, words and things that we say can really, really hurt and make a person angry. And in that pettiness, you might just be trying to be, doing whatever, but it's not a healthy way to communicate with your spouse. So
when you're in that, you have to make a decision. Well, what's going to be best for the relationship? Am I going to continue to just do this because I can? Or am I going to consider the feelings of my spouse? Maybe like we said, this is a trivial. When it's trivial to one, it may not be trivial to other.
Sure.
But if it is trivial to you, it should be trivial to me because we are one.
Yeah.
So maybe I am going to take into consideration what you said, and then I'm going to change the behavior.
Absolutely.
And that's really important.
Right. And even if it's not trivial to you.
Right.
Right. So you're going to definitely and it baffles me a lot of times that people do not really take the way that they talk to their spouse seriously.
Yeah.
And there's one conversation, and like I said, we put ourselves out there quite a bit and just share what we said. But I remember one time my husband was talking on the phone. And of course, I'm always going to dig out his dirt. I'm not going to tell about mine. Well, sometimes I'll tell about mine, but I'm perfect. So what, but he was talking on the phone. And he said something to me, and it was like he kind of was short with me. And I'm like, I don't care about this person on the phone. It was like a person that we were trying to book a trip or something. I can't remember. Anyways, but the person was there to serve us. I was like, I couldn't care less about that person on the phone. You make sure that you talk to me in the right tone and you talk to me in the right spirit. Forget the person on the phone. I don't care about that person on the phone at all. And you shouldn't care about that person on the phone at all. You should care about me and how I feel in that moment. And you should always make sure that you're caring about how your spouse feels. And if you're being petty or you being sarcastic or you being a little, again, talking about that little dig, if it hurts your spouse, then you don't want to do it. And like I said, you have to sometimes take the high road. That's one of the things that you have to do. Take the high road if your spouse is being petty. Take the high road if your spouse is the one that's doing the dig, and be like, you know what? That bothers me. When you say that or when you talk like that, like that doesn't make me feel good. So like, let's not do that again.
Like, Kenyatta says something that's true, that words do hurt, not just sticks.
Yeah. Okay. We just you lost us, our faces for a second, but
hold on for a second.
Yeah, probably need to get that off of there.
No, it's not that. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
we lost our camera. So hold on just a second.
Yeah. Sticks and stones are not the only things that hurt, but certainly words do hurt, and sometimes words hurt with a longer effect than sticks and stones. Again, like I said, it was over 20 something years ago that my husband had made that comment, but I still remember it.
And then like Carmen said that she comes from a family that uses sarcasm a lot, and that may have been how you grew up or how you communicated. But if your spouse is having an issue with your communication, then sometimes you have to change the way you do communicate,
absolutely
for your spouse.
Absolutely. Yeah, and now we're not talking about if there's a mutual thing and you guys are joking and you guys are both okay with that. That's not what we're talking about, because I come from well, I have a very sensitive sister. She's actually on this thing here somewhere. She's on here. She's super sensitive. So you can't really like joke certain things with her. Like, or you can't joke around her. She'll be like, oh my God, why did you say that? It's like, she's so dramatic, and it was like be so terrible. It would be like, oh my God, we're just totally just joking. Like, it was not even that serious, but she'll make it serious. And then everybody in the room is like, now it's serious. And it was a light thing, joke, but she'll make it extra serious. So because she's that way, like certain things I wouldn't like joke about around her, because she just will take it to heart. And if your spouse is that kind of person, you have got to bear their infirmity. The strong are to bear the infirmity of the weak. So if you're the person that can take a lot of tough language, and your spouse, whether it's a male or a female, because there's some men that don't like, sarcastic or mean or quick-witted behavior. Right. They don't like that. And not quick-witted in a nice way, but quick-witted in a mean way. They don't like that kind of conversation. If your spouse is tender-hearted and he's a male, treat him as such. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not a weak thing at all. Yeah. So, take that to heart and make sure that you're honoring, respecting that person, because that's the person you married, and you're okay with it before then. You need to be okay with it now, and then know your spouse, know that person, know how they are, and know if they are tenderhearted in that respect, and then make sure that you're dealing with them accordingly.
That's good. That's good. So, how do we deal with it if you are petty? Or if you are having petty arguments or things like that.
Right. How to stop having those.
So how do you stop having petty arguments? What would you suggest as one way to stop that?
Well, obviously, again, we talked about taking the high road, but a lot of our anger comes from our past. So they come from past experiences that we may have had with someone else, if we're newly married, or they may come from past things that have happened in our relationship that are still yet unresolved. So some of that pettiness will come up. So for example, so like if you're you had a situation with infidelity in your relationship, and you see a person come in that may have looked like that person. You guys are trying to get past that, but you see somebody come in and look like that person. You're like, well, I already know that he's your type. Because that's who you was, or she's your type because, she looked like Lulabelle, what I'm saying? Or whoever the other person is. That's petty, and that is harmful, and that is terrible. Right. That's like, you don't do that. You don't throw a person's past up in their face as pettiness, or their past mistakes, or their past issues that they've had. You don't throw those things back in their face. You don't bring those failures back up, because you wouldn't want anybody to consistently bring your failures back up. Yeah. So, now, certain times you can joke about certain things, but certain things is just really off limits. Right. And it's not funny.
Right. Especially when you like trying to move forward. We talked about that last week, letting your past pass.
Yeah.
And so, when you're trying to move forward in relationships, especially getting over maybe certain issues of a trust or whatever, when you choose to forgive that person, even though you may have the right to acknowledge the indiscretion, you have to sort of hold your tongue.
Yeah.
And like the Lord says, vengeance is mine. Let him fight those battles of the mind, to get the spouse to come back from something like that. But when you add pettiness into the mix of your conversation and into the mix of your argument, you're adding fuel to the fire.
Absolutely. One thing that I do want to say also about that is your spouse is a reflection of you. And you look in that mirror. When you're looking at your spouse, you're looking at a reflection of yourself. You're looking at a reflection of who you are. So if you want your spouse to, because a lot of times people use pettiness to try to, as a tool to try to control their spouse. Or try to control their spouse's behavior. So they'll make a petty comment to try to make their spouse maybe feel guilty about something in order to behave the way that you want them to behave. Let me tell you something. The only person's behavior that you can control is your own. You cannot control nobody else's behavior. You can control your own behavior, and it stops there. Now, being petty doesn't make somebody act like you want them to act.
Mhm.
Being good and being the type of reflection that they need to see helps people change their behavior.
Mhm.
If I am consistently mean to my husband, or if he's consistently mean to me, and he and he wants me to change, him being 10, well, you ain't gonna never change no way, because you so lazy, or whatever, whatever it is. I'm just using examples. That is never going to make them change.
For a lot of reasons. One, because as the head of the household, you're speaking that into the atmosphere.
Absolutely.
So if you are spiritual and you believe in the Bible and its principles, you're speaking those things over your spouse, and it'll cause them not to be willing to change.
Yeah.
And you're actually speaking that over yourself, because you're one.
Absolutely.
So you're not able to move forward and have a successful relationship because of the things that you speak.
Wow, that's powerful. That's powerful.
No,
go ahead. No, go ahead.
And I like what Kenyatta said, that sometimes pettiness has to be outgrown due to a certain level of immaturity, especially if you marry at a young age.
Absolutely.
So yeah, when you're single and when you're dating and when you're doing all this and coming together, we're saying that these are foundations and things to help you that from day one should be different at day 20. It should be different at year 1. It should be different at year 20. So if you have tendency to argue and be petty, and if you had sarcasm and all that in your relationship and is not being an effective way of communication, then we're saying at some point you should want to be able to look at some point of changing certain behaviors so that you can effectively communicate.
Absolutely. And we were going to say another thing, but I'm going to change this, taking action to break up your fights. I would say that you get no points for getting a good dig.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get no points. Nobody is in the audience of your life going, if you say something smart and they go, oh, you got that one.
But it feels so good in my head because it's going on in my head.
In your head, the clapping is going on in your head.
Right.
But it's not going on anywhere else. And guess what? You're losing points.
You are.
When you say something, when you got a one up, or you said something smart, or you said something, what I'm saying, I got you. Okay, I'm being petty. I said this. That you lose points, because you lose honor. As a woman, you lose honor. As a man, you lose honor when you speak to somebody or your spouse in a petty way, or in a negative way, or making them repeat past offenses. All of those things, you lose points. In your relationship and your marriage, lose points. There's no sense in saying, people always putting that marriage goals and all this other kind of stuff. No sense in doing all that if you're not going to talk to your spouse right. You know what I'm saying? Even if they don't talk to you right. Again, like I said, be that mirror, be the reflection. When they look at you, don't let them look at a reflection of the ugliness that they're perpetrating. Don't let them look at the reflection of the pettiness and the awful things. That be the reflection that God wants you to be. Like there's a song that says, and it talks about the Lord when he looks at us, when he sees me, he sees his righteousness. He sees the Holy Spirit filling up the emptiness. When he looks at me, he sees the blood he sheds. I'm glad he sees himself each time he looks at me. So when you look at that person, when that person looks back at you, let them see the reflection of what you want to be seen. So meaning, let them see the reflection of goodness. If they're being petty and if they're saying stuff, being mean, trying to get points, never give it back to them. Never give it back to them. Tell them, be dramatic, like my sister, and be like, no, don't be dramatic, but be like, you know what? Like that wasn't kind.
Right.
That wasn't a kind thing to say.
And we're talking about, not just the attribute that you may have, because sarcasm and sometimes being petty is when you are doing that to your spouse.
Yeah.
So when you're arguing or when you're having conversations and you can't communicate without being petty, then that's the issue that you need to change to have a successful relationship.
Yeah. And don't engage in it. Don't do the back and forth. Don't do that dance. No, don't do that dance and going back and forth, doing that, going back and forth with that pettiness. Don't do it. Don't go back and forth with it.
So So I guess if you have trouble with that, it's just some people might say it's a part of me.
Yeah.
Or I'm not ruling to change right now, or I how do I change? Whenever you're communicating and you're having discussions, you have always got to. It helps to be able to focus on the positive, right?
Yeah.
Right. So being able to say, you know what, we're having an issue with money, and so or let's say a spouse is gambling or something like that. That's a big thing because it's taken away from your livelihood, your income. But you know what? When you say, instead of be like, you know what? Well, we can't pay our bills because you out there losing money. If you're gonna gamble, you can't even win, right?
Right.
That's
very petty.
And that is petty. But if you were to address that situation and say, you know what, you're here and we're able to have this conversation.
Yeah.
So I thank you for being here. But now what we need to do is that there's some things that's hurting our family that we need to talk about.
Yeah.
And we need to come to agreement so that if you have a problem, we can get you help. Or if you don't understand our financial things right now where we can't, then, here's $20 that you can only do once a month, whatever. You have to have some type of communication and take away and make it always turn the negative into positive.
Yeah.
Like I remember that as an interview question. Anytime you go to interview, if they ask you something that's negative, try to always turn it into positive, and that's how it should be in your relationship.
Absolutely, turning that negative into a positive. And then even if the person, if your partner deflects all the time, if they always, you bring up something, and they always say something, well, you do this. Like for example, if you said, well, excuse me, can you talk about, we talk about this gambling? He well, we can talk about this gambling if we can talk about you going shopping and buying some hair. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. Well, you going to buy a wig, we can talk about that. If you can talk about that, that's petty and silly. Because that's not the point. You want me to look cute. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Those kind of things. If your spouse deflects, don't engage in that back and forth. Don't engage in that back and forth, because again, like we said, nobody gets points. Nobody gets points for making a good comment. Nobody does. It just doesn't happen. The next thing that we want to say is relate to your partner in the present. And again, this kind of stacks on, honestly, what we talked about last week. Let your past be your past. Don't keep bringing up silly things in a negative way that happened yesterday. You know what I'm saying? Deal with yesterday, deal with what happened this morning, today, and be done with it. You know what I'm saying? Let it be the past. Move on from those things.
And, sometimes just human, you might have the right to be offended at an offense.
Absolutely.
And just because something happened yesterday and you may have forgiven doesn't mean that you have forgotten.
Doesn't mean you've forgotten, and doesn't mean that you're over it.
And does not mean that you're over it. But if you continue to, focus on those positive things, it actually helps you get over those things. And then if you are able to focus like that, then it'll help you to not be petty. And especially when your spouse, the person that you're in a relationship with, is willing to make a change. And then sometimes you got to fight the enemy of the mind, because that's what the enemy will do. He will try to bring back past issues, past mistakes. And if you dwell on them, your sarcasm, your pettiness, your hurt is going to come out.
Absolutely. So our next point is take a pause instead of reacting. And this is, man, like I talked about this before, don't immediately clap back. You want to clap back. And these are tools that you learn to fight, how you learn to fight. Don't give the immediate clap back to your spouse when they say something, because sometimes they say something you want to be like, I'm going to go right on in there and I'm going to say it. I'm going to talk about your mama is what I'm going to do. You know what I'm saying? You're going to get right in there, but don't give the clap back immediately. Give yourself a moment and kind of think things through, because sometimes, and then too, my mama used to say something, can't nobody argue by themselves. Nobody can clown or she would say cut a shine by themselves. Nobody could do that alone. If they're doing it, okay, that's how you're going to be. It's all good.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Not giving them the silent treatment, because that's that's a different thing. But don't do that.
Do you think that men and women get over things different ways or faster? Like Carmen said, her husband is a master getting over things quickly. It takes her more time in the area. Do you think that's a man-woman thing, or do you just think that depends on the personality?
I think there are some things that men get over quicker than women. Women, because we're such emotional creatures, we internalize a lot, we reprocess a lot, we rethink a lot, and then this depends on what the offense is. You know, it really depends on what it is. Men tend to get over a lot of things quicker, or I won't say that they get over them quicker. I think that they move past them quicker. They may not really be over that, but I think they move past it.
And I also think it is a little bit man and woman, but it's also offender and offendee.
Absolutely.
Sometimes the offender is quicker to move on because they want to forget about it. They could initially
forgive me.
They could initially have the genuine thought, you know, or they don't want to bring it up. And then, so if you are a person that has offended your spouse, you have to sort of have some compassion and understanding that even though they choose to move forward or to forgive, that, you know, they're still dealing with that offense. Sometimes you don't want to negate it by saying, oh, let's just move past it. Let's just move, let's communicate, let's not dwell on it, but let's say, hey, you know, we're working together to move back and have a sincere heart to make sure that you're not offending, you know, the person that you've already offended. So sometimes, you know, men do move on, like you said, certain things faster, even though they sometimes hold on to them. They just sort of put it down and push forward. But being offensive to your spouse or whatever, if you have made that transgression or that offense, you have to take into account how they're healing and their process, and not rush them.
That is so profound. And then the fact is, like, you know, I don't think it's a man-woman thing, because I know that there's men that have had things that have hurt them, and because it has not been really dealt with and their feelings haven't been validated in that moment, it keeps coming up. And that's not just men or women, that's men and women. A lot of times those feelings will keep coming up if you are not allowed to deal with those things. That is why therapy is what it is today, why it's so huge right now. Just seems like everybody in the world got a therapist. I'm not against the therapist. You know what I'm saying? Actually, what we do is a little bit of therapy. And then a lot of times when we talk to people outside of this, it's a little bit of therapy. But, you know, you have got to, this is leading to our next point. You got to invite open and honest communication. Deal with whatever that hurt is. Deal whatever that thing that is bruised. A bruise is a breaking underneath the skin. So it's not necessarily a cut, but it's definitely super painful. I had something fall on my back. I don't know, was it maybe 2 months ago? And I came home. When I said, I thought that, first of all, I was grateful that I wasn't paralyzed. Like, honestly, like totally grateful that I wasn't paralyzed. But I had on this really thick waist trainer at the time. So I think it probably saved me, honestly, in the hand of the Lord, honestly. But when I took the thing off and my husband looked at it, it was a huge bruise on my back. But it felt like somebody had cut me open. But it was a huge bruise on my back, huge, black and blue on my back. And that bruising underneath the skin, just because my skin wasn't broken on the outside and it wasn't evident on the outside, that pain was still there. And it was excruciating pain. Couldn't see it necessarily from the outside, but you knew something had happened. Something was wrong because it was discolored. You know, it didn't look like it normally did. And it was very tender. So if he touched it, or if I leaned up against something, I knew that pain was still there. And that's the same thing about an emotional hurt, whether it's male or female. You know, it may be a bruise and you may not look at it and it's evident when you look at it, because there's not no stitches, it's not bleeding, it's not all that, but it's still there. That hurt is still there, and it needs to be addressed and it needs to be healed. And a bruise has to heal from the inside.
That's right. Come on, Facebook, hit them hearts.
I know that's right. I'm a heart myself.
You're talking good.
I'm a heart myself.
You know, and the thing about that is that, you know, a cut or whatever, a cut takes a bandage to to heal.
Yeah.
It's something that you have to cover up
Mhm.
because the offense is already cut.
Yeah.
But a bruise can easily be covered, but
Yeah.
the pain will still be there. Because
Absolutely.
you can put on clothes, you can cover that, you can cover those things to hide it. And emotionally, a lot of times when we're bruised in relationships, we do pettiness, we
Mhm.
do sarcasm,
Yeah.
we do
There's signs
clapping
of
back,
hurt.
all those things because we're covering up the
The
bruise.
bruise. Yeah.
That's a good message.
Absolutely. You got to get to the bottom of
Yeah.
what has happened so that you're not bringing up those past things, not saying things to be petty, to try to get back at somebody. Because usually that's the reason why somebody is petty.
Mhm.
That's the reason why I'm petty, honey, because I'm trying to, I'm gonna teach you.
Right.
You're gonna know.
Right.
And I'm not petty with my husband. I don't think that I've been, at least in any of our recent years, even if I have, forgive me.
Mhm.
But sometimes I'm petty with other realtors and stuff at work. You know what I'm saying? With other realtors, like if they do something that's really dumb, and the Lord is still working on me, so y'all pray for me, okay?
Yeah.
But if they do something that's really dumb, or if they do something to try to be condescending, I'm like, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. I've been in this game a long time. Let me tell you what I'm going to do.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
like for example, this is something that's super petty. So, like if I come up to show a house, and of course with COVID and everything, it's like a whole big to do to even do that. But if I come up to show the house, I'm coming up. You see, I got my paperwork. You see, I got my app. I can open the phone. Why would you completely relock the house? I'm sitting on the porch with my client. You completely relock the house. You don't just verify. All you gotta do is verify that I have my app, and just give me the key, and then we walk in the house. No, pettiness is when you relock the door and do all of that. Now, I normally don't do that. I normally give the person the key. But I had one person, another agent, that was just being ignorant to me. And I was like, oh, is that what we're doing today? You're going to just be ignorant and say something smart to me? So I'm going to be petty. I'm about to lock this whole door up, and you're going to have to go all on your Bluetooth. And we out in the country, so you may not even have a signal.
Right.
So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to lock it up. Isn't that terrible? That's petty. I'm going to give myself hearts. But anyway, but that's petty.
Right. And
But again, I was being petty because I was trying to get back at him for being ignorant to me, for being me.
Right. And then, even though it felt good, it really wasn't.
It was not Christ-like. It was awful. It was not nice. And I apologize to my client. I said, no, I'm sorry. I just should not have done that. I said, I'm a work in progress, guys.
Oh, I've done the same thing. In my profession, I'll be petty. I'm a type of person that if you don't look at my facial expressions and my tone, might not know what I'm saying to you, and I'm cutting you deep because I'll cut you and smile at you so sometimes my partner, the person I'm flying with, may get on my nerves, and then their skill set is not as good as mine. So I'll look at them, especially on landing the plane, be like, oh man, you landed all hard. And, be like, oh, my chest hurts. or then I'll look at them while I'm landing the plane, just sort of looking at them, squeaking
Greasing
on
it.
in and just say, oh, blind squirrel gets a nut every now and then. But, knowing about that. And, there is times that is okay, even though it's still not Christ-like to be petty, and sometimes it just makes you feel good. Whatever it is, what it is. But when you bring that into your relationship,
it's not
and
good.
you
It's
use
never
it against
good.
your spouse, it's
Never good.
and you're never gonna win. Like you say, you're never gonna get the brownie points that you expect to have.
Absolutely. Now, our last point is, are you gonna
Sure. Let's see what Taylor said. She said, the Holy Spirit has taught me that love does not repay evil for evil, especially when my flesh wants to smite somebody.
Yes, that is a very, very good point. You don't repay evil for evil in your own relationship, again, because you are only hurting yourself. You're hurting the quality of your relationship when you do that. And I had two people that we've been kind of mentoring at two couples, well, a number of couples, but two of the couples that we were talking to, and two of them said to me, well, what about the other person? Why they ain't got to do nothing? Going back to number one, first thing, you can only control what you do. You cannot control what they do. And loves without the expectation of anything in return. You don't have no guarantees that the person is going to love you back.
That's true.
The person that's going to be good to you back. But goodness and love, what is it? 1 Corinthians the 13th. Love, it suffers long. It's not puffed up. It bears all things. It believes all things. It believes the best. it believes that even though this person is not talking to me out the side of their neck right now, I still believe this person is going to be good and do good. Again,
even if they don't.
And even if they don't, you got to do it because it's based on what you do. It's not based on what they do. And God's never going to judge you based on what they said. Because when you say, oh, well, this is what this person, because you did, God, did you see what it did? Absolutely. I saw everything they did. But did you see what you did? Because that's what I'm judging you based on what you did. All right, last point. Talk about your feelings. Talk about your feelings. You talked about that before. So go ahead and give a little bit more on that.
It's open and communication. You got to be able to express yourself, and then, like you said earlier, even in a safe environment. The worst thing that a woman can do to her husband is try to emancipate them by saying,
emasculate them.
Excuse me, emancipate them.
Don't free them. Don't emancipate them. You out of this relationship.
Right, but by saying, oh, you know what, because you want to communicate, or because you cry, or whatever, or because you always want to have this stuff, that you are, not a man or whatever. If you have a man that is trying to communicate with you as your wife and trying to get through to you, you should be happy about that, because some men have trouble communicating and expressing themselves and talking about your feelings. Most of them do.
They're not going to be mushy about it.
It wasn't the way that they were trained. It wasn't the way they grew up. But when you get Christ in your heart, then you have a heart to love your spouse in a way where you want to share. Where you want to have those experiences and communicate to better yourself. So a lot of times, it's hard for men to do that. But when they push through and do that, you got to be receptive. You got to be able to talk about your feelings. You got to be able to understand and relate to their feelings.
Absolutely. We're so grateful that you guys have come on tonight. We actually have Lisa Porter. She's her and her husband have been married, oh my gosh, probably 40 years or 40 plus years, somewhere around there. But they're going to be coming on at some point and sharing with us within the next couple of weeks. So we're excited that they're going to be coming on with us. And also we have some other guests that are going to be coming on with us soon. But again, we talked tonight about pettiness and how not to be petty, and not to let the degree of pettyology or the masters of pettiness rule in your relationship, because nobody wins when you're having petty arguments, petty behavior, because it turns into extra things. Get rid of the past baggage, get rid of the past hurts, have open, honest dialogue and conversation. And take the high road. Don't do that dance, that back and forth with your spouse. You can do that easily. I don't care how long you've been married. You can do that clap back. Be like, oh, I'm gonna get you together. I'm going to get you together. I got your number. Okay, get their number, but then don't keep. You know what I'm saying? Don't keep going back and forth with that. And if your spouse is saying mean things, or if they're speaking in a mean way, step back from it. And then when you go back in and say, you know what, the way that you spoke to me, that's unacceptable.
Right.
We're not going to talk to each other like that.
And you have to understand that, if a person, your spouse, is talking to you that way, then you got to start looking for the bruise. You got to start pulling back. Something bothered them. I like, as Carmen said, great topic. Got beat up by. We all have issues of pettiness, and have all done this. Yes. And we have all made this mistake. And then it's just a part of life, it's part of being human, and it's part of relationship. But if it's something that is hurting, which it will be, because it stops communication, then it's a foundation or a fence to be able to change that behavior. Absolutely. So that you can have a successful. Because if you don't deal with if you deal with your spouse and you don't deal with them with pettiness, then it helps you to have that, to foster that communication and foster that confidant, to foster that peace, and to foster that joyousness when you can be in your spouse's presence all day and you both have good feelings, good vibes. Like, you can be like, oh, I'm starting out this day with good vibes. And then your spouse says something mean or looks at you in a, because those looks can be petty too. You can look at your spouse
and it's very condescending.
Right, because communication is verbal and nonverbal.
Verbal and nonverbal. So if you looking at your spouse upside their head like you a chump, or you looking at your wife like you disgust me, that type of behavior, you got to get rid of it, because it only hurts you. It hurts your relationship. It only hurts you. Get to the bottom of why that person is saying what they're saying or acting the way that they're acting. But like I was about to say, you can be having a great day and then they look at you crazy and your whole day is ruined. But you can have moments and days where you guys have a fantastic day and you just feel good being together all day.
Right. Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in, and thank you guys as always. We want you to follow us on social media. Follow us on Instagram at Wattsup Entertainment, and Facebook at Wattsup Entertainment, and YouTube at Wattsup Video.
Yeah.
And as always, share and like this. And sorry for the 9 people who were angry at this. Hopefully it was working on your heart, or maybe you're just mad. But, we wish you to be glad. So we don't want to offend anybody, but we give you messages and hopefully things to help build better relationships.
Listen, God wants you not just married. He wants you happy.
Happily.
He wants you happy. That's why he put you together with your spouse, so that you guys can be joyous and build a life. You're building something. You're building something. I don't care if you just got married or you've been married for 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. You're still building something. And if you're, that's one of the things that Lisa Porter and her husband are going to talk about. It's when you're building, you're the platform that your children will stand on. So how to build a strong foundation. And the enemy wants to tear that foundation apart. He really, really does. Don't let him.
Right. And if you have conversations in front of your children, no matter what their age is, and that sometimes can be a seed that they'll put into them, and then they aren't able to communicate correctly because they've seen mom and dad do it.
Absolutely. And it can be for blended families or just, it doesn't matter.
Young kids, old kids.
Yeah.
And then, sometimes in a household, you have issues. You have issues, and you may have arguments. And sometimes it is in front of the children. But if you do those things, and there should always, you have to show a resolve.
Absolutely. Open communication.
Yeah. Your mom, your dad, did something dumb, blah, blah, blah. We talked about it. We argued, but now we're back to the unified front.
Absolutely.
Or we resolve this, because even though we may have been angry or may have been hurt, we still love each other.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to talk to them in a way that if I have girls, that she would be accepting to have a man talk to her. And as a woman, you wouldn't talk to me in a place where boys will look at and think that it's acceptable for a woman to belittle a man.
Absolutely. I never, ever, and I'm so off topic and we're about to close out, but I never talk to my husband in a disrespect. Well, I don't talk to him disrespectfully anyways, but I would never talk to him disrespectfully in front of my boys, because I don't want them to feel like it's okay for any woman to speak to them in a way of disrespect, because it's not.
Well, we appreciate you guys tuning in. And once again, like I said, please like and share and with everybody. And, hopefully we will see you guys next week. Yeah. This has been Frederick and Jean Watts, and this is Love in 60 Seconds. Thank you guys so much for tuning in tonight.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Well, guys, we have to wrap it up this evening. We really hope that you've enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, this conversation has been amazing, and we want you to tune in again next time so that we can discuss more of these amazing topics and these topics of interest. Then don't forget to DM us, contact us, reach out to us, and we will definitely respond back.
This has been Love in 60 Seconds. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
All right. Good night, everybody.
60 seconds.